Pereira, a good Irish name like Fernandez. Welcome. Kaylee's our new recording secretary.
Welcome.
So we'll be critiquing your work every week, or every planning board meeting, whenever that is.
She can take it.
Okay. On the agenda, our first items are under planning board business and policies. We have discussions in terms of release of surety in a couple of different projects, and also discussion about, in essence, the surety and landscaping on the Clapp Street Solar project. We have a report of the Planning Board and Economic Development Director, including a follow-up on current and upcoming zoning bylaw map revisions, including discussion on recreational marijuana, moratorium, approval of minutes, bills and warrants, and then at 7:20 or whenever 7:20 comes around, a continuation with Mr. Rossi on the project at 379 Old Colony. Other than that, let's start with the release of surety for South Shore Millwork. I know there was a letter.
Right, under tab A of your binders, you should find a letter from me or a memo from me requesting surety release on 2 projects and backup information on those 2 requests. As of this time, South Shore Millworks has not provided to me the as-built plan that they will need to provide to us in order to release the surety on that first item. I expected to get that today, and that's why it's on here, and I'm sorry we have to skip that one, I think, because unless you want to vote for it without the proof that it's been.
Well, weren't there 2 items, the cash of $2,500 and wasn't there a $20,000 surety bond as well, if memory serves me?
For South Shore Millworks?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
20.
The earth removal.
Oh, this is, all they're asking for is the 25.
I thought they were looking for the 20,000.
There you go.
Yeah, request a cash bond release.
Yes, those are the 2 items.
Oh, oops. My mistake. I just listed
Okay.
the 2,500. In either case, the as-built plan has not been delivered to me, so
All
I think we'll have to skip that one for now.
Or unless there's a motion to take action on that, we'll leave it tabled.
Before we move on,
Sure.
this also predates, the initial part of this predates my time on the board. This also is to earth removal. Is that why the why the building next to the Millworks building has what appear to be large tarps in the driveway that have been there for a couple of weeks?
To be honest, I hadn't noticed. The original $20,000 was that they were, as part of their building expansion, there was quite a bit of gravel that was going to be removed, so the $20,000 was to ensure that the site was restored.
Yeah.
And then the $2,500 was some landscaping, but the tarps,
It's not sure if it's, let's see, is that Southwest or John Scott at that point? When you're coming up, whichever street it is at that point, when it intercepts.
I think
with
it's John
Maple,
Scott.
There's a house, just past the South Shore Millwork, across Maple Street from the Millwork building, I think.
the 2 or 3 story house.
Think so?
That's on-
And there's a couple of big piles of something covered with tarps.
Yeah,
If this relates to earth removal, and that is said earth, I'm not sure if that's.
it shouldn't unless they transported,
Yeah.
materials from, most, if not all, the earth removal was behind
Yeah, I just,
the facility. The house that I think you're referring to, maybe, in fact, I think is owned by South Shore Millwork, but I don't think there was,
Yeah.
there was not to be any earth removal.
yeah, I just know there's a couple of large piles right there of something.
Well, all the more reason to,
Yeah,
if we're not going to deal with it, it'll stay on the table, or
that's fine.
stay an open issue until we do resolve it.
Yeah, the building inspector indicated that they had cleared up all the remaining items, but I can have him go out and check on that, too.
I don't even know if that's their property or anything, I just know that
Yeah, I
it's
think
right
it is.
there, so.
I don't know.
We can follow up on it.
Larson Farms.
Right, so that leaves Larson Farms. and they're asking for a balance of $10,494.35 to be returned as a partial release of the surety for the items listed in the, there's a spreadsheet attached.
So, on Lassen Farms, we're still gonna have a $12,000 surety?
Yes.
Because I know they're finally done a little bit with the cul-de-sac center.
Right. And they still have to put the Cape Cod berm on it.
Okay, all right, that
And
was my
he's
question.
been in conversations with the highway, with Keith, the
All
highway
right.
superintendent.
Because what's there, they did the center of the island and planted some trees, so it looks really nice. But that stuff's gonna roll right off. But
Right.
that's because there's no berms.
And Keith, yeah, exactly. And Keith also worked with, well, he requested that certain plants be used because it's going to be dumped full of snow in the wintertime.
Right.
And- But yeah, it will get a bermed edge so that it all is contained.
So, could you just walk us through this spreadsheet? So the items 1 through 16, those have all been completed, and there's an approval. I don't know who KS and BM are.
Keith Silver and Bernie Marshall. Keith Silver is the highway superintendent, Bernie Marshall is the water sewer superintendent.
Okay. So those have been verified as completed?
Right, and then this isn't showing what was in red in the colored copy, and I apologize
Yeah.
for that, but I think it's items 17, 18, 19, wait, is that lining up?
Yeah, I was referencing items in red.
17, 18, 19, 20.
I don't know if that remaining balance, that totals up to 23?
The less remaining items is included in that list, and they are shown in red, so.
So that the, just maybe along the same lines that Steve is asking, the 10,494 is the sum total of all these items that have been signed off by either.
It's the sum total of the items that are in this column that, there's these three, they're not highlighted because they're in red on the color copy, I apologize. And one more, and I'm thinking it's,
Okay,
the last item, and that's the 12,000, and then the release was the balance.
all right, so what you're saying is the 10,494 is the sum of 874, 3,244, and
751, and then 184, and I believe it's,
well, that adds up
It's
to
more
more.
than 10,000, yeah.
And in fact, those first three items are more than 10,494.
no, I know it adds up, it's just I'm thinking maybe the wrong items.
I guess the point I'm driving at, are these items that constitute the 10,494 signed off by either Keith or Bernie?
Verbally,
Okay. All right,
So I don't have a color copy. Which items are we approving the release of?
well, that's what we're trying to figure.
it's everything but, I think it's, and I apologize, I can't
I think
remember, and if
it's
this is
everything but the
incomplete-
outside column, the right side column. That's about,
No, it's everything in the last column minus 12,543, which is the sum total of, I believe it's 4 of the items in that list, but they're not highlighted on this list, so I apologize.
Yeah, so the sum total is the 23,000 of all those items. And they're saying some of those have been since completed, but, yeah, I'm not sure which
And how come it
ones
doesn't,
those are.
Well, I
yeah,
know
how come
it's
it doesn't show approval for those that we're voting on tonight? Like, shouldn't there be a KS all the way down for the ones that add up to the 10,494, or no? I don't know how it works. A verbal approval doesn't mean much when you're voting on something.
Do you want to table this item to the next meeting? Because I'm totally happy to break it down and provide better information to the board. I apologize.
Yeah, because these, the 4 items here add up to 14,055.
And I don't
What
want to
happens
say
if I
that that's
take out
necessarily the items I'm
2184?
thinking of, so.
I'd feel more comfortable as well if it was confirmed that they were done.
Yeah, no, I can't get numbers to add up to either one of these two.
Is there something where we have an electronic copy that we can confirm what items we're talking about?
Right now, have electronic copy? Access to electronic copy?
Yeah, just to, and that's what we're trying to do, is figure out what items we're talking about, right?
I don't have access to an electronic copy at
Okay.
this time.
Why don't we table this for the moment?
Making that up to that 10,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or the 12, so that's
Yeah,
what's got me
either one.
confused. All right, why don't we table this, marked in red. Did you send that out in
Yeah.
color? Did I miss it?
This?
No, the spreadsheet that shows red.
I don't think I emailed it to anyone.
Okay.
No, I think it's on my local drive.
All right,
I didn't see that.
Well, we'd want the
Dropbox.
approvals as well, right?
I'm sorry?
We'd want the approvals as well.
Right. So you want Keith to sign off on it physically? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we try to catch up with the agenda in terms of time slots? It's past 7:20. Mr. Rossi, if you could join us, please.
So everything for Mr. Rossi is under tab 1 of your binder, and the way it's put together is the most recent review, number 3, is on top, with new attachments being A, B, and C, which is a site plan with waivers he's proposing, a detail of the parking turning schemes, and a site plan without the waiver he's proposing. I can walk through the document if you'd like. Recommendations are listed. Okay. So, thank you for joining us, David.
Thank you.
So, the recommendation is that the applicant has presented 2 revised schemes to the board based on their previous comments and questions at the May 2nd and May 16th meetings, which are R1 and R2 attached. The A shows the site plan as requested with parking waivers, and C depicts the plan with 9 parking spaces. And I'm just making a caveat that additional stormwater design and ADA considerations would be necessary if this was to be put in place. See the next list item. The applicant is asking the board to approve Scheme A in lieu of the parking as required by uses in Article 7 of the Norton zoning bylaw. I put in here, under these bullets, for potential uses, this could be listed under commercial, bulky retail, industrial warehouse. Industrial warehouse we want to strike because that's not allowed in this zone. But commercial versus bulky retails is a little bit of a gray area. I had that discussion with the building inspector, and he really thinks of this more as retail trade service at this time as he's proposing. As the building is intended to serve a singular employee in a limited capacity, waivers were considered by the planning board may include a stipulation that conditional language be recorded with the Registry of Deeds, which requires driveways, parking, access, circulation to be constructed per the standards and regulations therein, and in the event of a change or use or ownership. So I included that language in here, and we could condition it with that language. So the town of Norton staff, including the fire, safety, public, water, sewer, and all those folks, are comfortable with the application with the requirement as outlined above. There are some additional questions from David Miles, the deputy fire chief, that are on page 4, number 1, under issues, comments. We had a couple questions there. So then requested waivers would require a motion and a vote, and I would recommend you do what the planning board does and review the project at this time. And then, as you see on page 2, are some proposed conditionings, that language for proposed conditionings, and then the background and where the applicant stands in terms of review against our zoning bylaw.
Is the fire department comfortable with the lack of access around the building in terms of paved access? He doesn't really,
The fire department would like all buildings and structures constructed in Norton to be built according to our dimensional requirements and standards. Given that this is a small business and we've had the conversations with Mr. Rossi, we've gone back and forth quite a bit, he's comfortable with conditioning language that if there's a change of use or ownership or
Okay.
et cetera. But he did have some of these questions about what if you decide to hire more personnel, how will that be regulated, et cetera.
So the three drawings, A, B, and C. So A is a drawing which depicts the waived version of the parking plan where adding the outline in blue to be filled with crushed stone, that would provide the turning area for any delivery trucks. B is just a zoomed up, is that just a zoomed in version?
Yeah, because you lose a little detail in the smaller, in the other one.
Okay, Plan A, and then C was what we'd seen before, which was the original
Exactly.
proposed with 8
Yep.
parking spaces behind.
Yep.
Okay, just to clarify. And so I don't know if someone can walk us through the truck turning radii of the plan here. There's a few different depictions, so.
Is in regard to,
So this is having a truck would pull in,
the truck would pull
front
in.
end to the end of the property line there, and then,
The truck would pull in up to where it says like 33.8, somewhere in that
drive
area.
straight and then back in.
And then back into that
Uh-huh.
turning area and then
Okay,
pull forward, turning right.
Where would your car be when that happens?
Well, actually up at the end of that driveway.
Okay.
other questions or comments from the board?
Did you get a Title V?
No.
When are you gonna do that?
Once we get past this phase,
I don't see how we're getting past this phase unless you do that.
Where was the septic system? Is the
It's
septic
out.
system in the front now?
It's in the front,
It's
right.
presently in the front.
the idea was if we don't get through Title V with the present situation, that's why we would put it in that area in the back of the house. Where it says proposed septic relocation. Which is consistent through both plans, with and without the waiver.
And how about that, looks like a septic cover to me at where the turnaround is, that we identified.
Yeah, we couldn't get any details on that. When I tried with what I was told was, through the highway department, that's kind of like an area to clean out the wash basins.
Or what wash basins?
There are catch basins at the bottom, at the street, and the best anybody knew that's just access to those. It's got the same style cover with the same style diamond plate pattern on it.
Where was that at?
It's where this turnaround is right now. It's like right in this spot right here, just above it.
Why would that have anything to do with the town catch basin?
I have no idea. But when I went to the water department, and they contacted the highway department, and that was the explanation, was it's got something to do with that.
Because that cover impacts the driveway preparation that it's not going to be completed to the back of the building, right? We had-
You lost
we
me a little bit.
We had talked about, you know, because of this proposed parking for some future date,
Mhm.
back of the building, and then we decided there was gonna be a driveway up the left-hand side of the building.
Correct.
That covers in that area.
Well, I imagine we could just, I mean, if that had to be done, you would just grade to the surface of that cover, and you'd put your driveway around that.
I would agree, but it'd be nice to know what it is.
Is the cover currently listed on the map?
No.
We're in the vicinity, I'm
It-
trying to
it's-
picture.
So where's this again?
Where,
I think it's right around.
where the proposed turnaround is, do you see where the proposed turnaround is?
The
And
turnaround.
then there's a dark blue section to the left of that.
Where the truck,
It's on,
That's where the truck is, correct?
It's where like the 15 is, if you look at the detailed drawing.
Okay.
Okay.
and it looks like a manhole of
so
some
the manhole
sort.
cover's right here?
Yeah, well, and that's just it. If you,
Just above the, right now where the backup area is, or where the parking area is.
there's two street catches right in there. There's a grate, and then there's another one out on the curb. In between those is an identical cover to that one, with the same pattern, the same markings. So when they told me that it had to do with the catch, I guess they do I don't
Probably how
know.
they clean the catch.
Yeah, I think that's how they
Go
get
into the
maintenance to go in and clean that out. And they said it's got something to do with that. I mean, that's,
But I don't know if you did any title work before buying the property. There were easements against the property for that infrastructure?
there was no sign of anything, no.
Yeah, I just think it's a concern for you. No, because you want to do the driveway that's future date driveway that's going to go to the back of the property. It's going to go right over it.
Well, what's
So,
necessary?
Right to it, huh?
I mean,
No,
That happens all the
I just
time.
raised the concern about it. We grade up to it, like you said, you know?
they can change the rim elevation on a catch basin manhole cover
Mm-hmm.
for the grade.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just I mean, it looks just very, very roughly, that's gotta be 60 feet into the property, and it just, unless there's a wet area out back that you've got a drainage system that runs through that property.
Yeah,
that-
no, there's nothing wet back there. I didn't understand it either, and I couldn't get any other detail on it.
But, I mean, I obviously don't know the legal status of that, but if the town has had something in there for any period of time, then the town has what's called a prescriptive easement with a right to utilize that, even if there's nothing recorded, just so you know.
Mhm.
And you've spoken to him about the language, or the type of language that we would put as a condition that would require a future site plan and review of stormwater in the event that the property is sold or used beyond the one space parking.
Right, so,
You're comfortable with that, Mr. Rossi?
I haven't seen anything officially, but within the discussions,
Right,
yes.
yeah, we haven't written it up
Yep.
officially, but the concept.
Yeah, the concept, absolutely.
I have some draft language here if you want me to read it. It's on
Okay.
page 2. In the event of change of use, building expansion, or upon transfer of ownership, all new horizontal and vertical construction shall be designed and constructed per the dimensional standards, stormwater management practices, and access provisions outlined in the Norton zoning bylaw and state regulations per the applicable state building codes. This includes all driveways, parking, and access circulation. That's a little repetitive. But,
Yeah.
yeah. Probably doesn't have to.
That's a nice way of doing it.
The deputy fire chief have you spoken with him? He's fine with this? I know his statement here, but I just want to make sure that, he's okay verbally, because I'm thinking in the wintertime, if there's 2 feet of snow there and they can't get their vehicles back there and there's a fire or something, you know, heaven forbid, I want to make sure he's okay with that before we vote on it.
Everything that's included in written form has been approved through him, and he's said this is language that I've said to put in this report. So I can't speak on his behalf, but I can put it in writing that that's what he said.
Did he elaborate beyond what he put in writing when you spoke with him? Like, did he?
Just offhand
Yeah,
elaborate?
or-
I mean, we have conversations all the time.
Well, he's requesting that all structures be erected according to the standards. But in this particular project, did he provide any latitude? You know what I'm,
He,
because I don't want to go against his request, I think, is where I'm coming from.
well, he's not in the business of designing projects. He's in the business of implementing health and safety measures for the town. So he's prefers to defer to my department as far as reviewing projects, and he supports our zoning bylaw and our dimensional standards and all of that is put in place in order to enforce structural developments in town of Norton. That's kind of a roundabout answer.
Well, if he was in the room right now, would he say, I'm fine with it, or would he say,
He's comfortable with including language that if it changes in use in any way, and this is the same discussion I've had with the building inspector, if it changes in use or structure or you make any kind of
Absolutely.
changes, then they have to come back for potentially a special permit.
I would take that as he's okay with it as is.
Right.
And Mr. Rossi, Deputy Miles does raise the issue of hiring of employees. And I know Tabitha just read off this language, but we've talked about change of use of building expansion. Your intent is not to have employees, but if in fact you held onto the business, you didn't, the building, you didn't expand it, but you hired 3 employees, then we've got an issue. So I'd like to see some language in here, and I want to know that you're comfortable with it, that talks about the hiring of employees, that it would require the review, because these folks are going to have to park somewhere.
I'm fine
So,
with that,
Okay.
absolutely.
Either direct hired employees or contracted
Yep.
employees as well.
Chief Fleming and Mr. Ross, you're a single employee, you seem to 9 to 5 doing work and using the area as storage and a work outfit, work location.
Yes.
Your business quadruples, would you ever consider hiring a staff member?
I don't know, I mean, I'm not trying to expand the business. I've got a certain amount of work, and I'm just looking to keep that going. I'm really not looking to expand the business at all. I mean, it's just pretty much been the same workload for the last 5 years.
So a 5-year plan, 10-year plan is to continue?
Just continue what I'm doing, yeah.
But if in fact something were to happen, you're okay with language that would
Absolutely,
require you
yes.
to come back? And
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with the conditions that were outlined by Tabitha. I think those are good and encompass a lot of what we've talked about. Back to fire, where is the nearest, is there a fire hydrant on the property? Is there one adjacent to? Where's the nearest?
I honestly don't know that.
Don't know, just in terms of that, I don't know if that was reviewed with the fire chief.
The fire chief would have looked at that,
Yeah.
I'm sure, and said something about the hydrant being, because that's the first thing he says
Yeah,
when it's an
okay.
issue.
All right, if there are no further comments, questions, or concerns, I would entertain a motion to approve the site plan with the conditions that we've spoken about,
I'll motion to approve.
and those conditions also be recorded at the Registry of Deeds, so that any future potential owner would be aware of that obligation. Is that comfortable with, I forget who made the motion? And second?
Steve? I think you have to vote on the waivers too, right? The parking waiver and
Okay, I suppose we should formally, before we approve it, let's waive the, just the parking waiver? What are the specific waivers?
The
there still a
parking
lighting
requirements.
waiver?
There's lighting.
The lighting waiver and the parking?
Well, he provided lighting,
Yeah, we ended up
so-
fulfilling the
Oh, that's right.
lighting.
Fulfilled the light, he fulfilled the lighting, he fulfilled the landscaping, the surface drainage plan, and the traffic parking lot plan would probably need to be waived.
So specifically, the two waivers that still need to be acted on is obviously the parking
Right.
and surface drainage. So there are two waivers that are still necessary, one being parking and the other surface drainage. So before we actually act on the motion, I'd ask you to withdraw your motion.
Withdraw.
And the second,
Move the second.
thank you. Is there a motion to grant waivers to the town's parking requirements and surface drainage plan? Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a
Seconded.
second? There's a motion and second to approve those two waivers.
And they will be conditioned.
They will be
These are
incorporated
changed.
into the conditions.
Okay.
All right. You take a roll call. Tim?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
I too will vote yes. So those two items have been waived. Now, if someone could make a motion to approve the site plan with the conditions that we've spoken about, and those conditions will also be recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
So moved.
Is there a second? A motion and second. Tim?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Steve?
May I just ask one
Certainly.
clarifying question? So the plan we're approving is the plan with the
A.
Plan A? And then, do we also need to include the landscaping
Correct.
plan as well? So,
Right. But the landscaping on Plan A does show.
I guess that does show that on Plan A. Okay, that's fine. I'll vote yes.
Ed
Yes.
two will vote yes. Wish you well. We'll,
you.
Tabitha will drop that language, probably out of and we'll get that to you, make sure that everyone's comfortable with it, and then record it, and then sure.
Fantastic.
Good
Thank you
to go.
very much. Thanks for your time.
Great.
for all your
Good
work.
luck.
Thank you.
We'll miss
Good luck,
seeing you.
yeah.
And David, the new 500 is on Old Colony and Grove Farm Lane.
Thank you,
Oh, so that's
Peter.
right next door. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Just count it, Peter.
Okay, getting back to the agenda, we left off, both sureties are going to be tabled. The next discussion was landscaping on Clapp Street on the solar farm.
Right, so this actually was meant to just be a discussion. No, I don't have any backup items on this because we have talked about this before. And I know there are abutters present in the audience as well who are interested to know what's going on. So this started before me. There was a letter that all of you signed off on that provided surety for landscaping for abutters of the Clapp Street Solar Project. And we've been trying to work with the applicant. The solar project was sold to a different project manager, our owner's rep. We've been working with them, going back and forth, had a conference call with them and their landscape designer, where we discussed that the plantings had been deer browsed, like 200 linear feet of arborvitae that were planted to screen the Hayden property. Were deer browsed up to like a 4-foot height, so you could see through the bottom to the solar fields. And I proposed that we put in understory plantings, and we talked about it on the phone, and there was agreement to that. And then they got back to me and said that they would not want their landscaper to do it, that we should just get our own landscaper to do it, that they weren't planning to complete that work. So that's why I'm coming back to the board, because I tried to handle this administratively. But I will need some kind of vote to allow me to release the money and hire a contractor, which would likely happen in the early fall, because it's getting to be late in the summer season now.
Well, in addition to the large run of arborvitaes, there's also a series of white pines that have died off. They don't want anything to do with that either?
They have said that they would complete items related to the Zwickers property. I haven't seen proof of that I've asked for proof of that. You're shaking your head. I'm assuming that has not been completed either. So they've said they're going to do work that still hasn't been completed, and then they're saying they're not going to do the extra work at all. And that, to me, says that we have this money held in order to complete that, and we should use it to provide the screening to the neighbors.
Just so I'm clear, because the Zwickers are here, what I'm reading, the condition was that they were to provide you 3 trees of your choosing, or to be planted, at your discretion?
The record, Dean Zwicker, 9 Clap, and 15. They were going to put 3 trees, so 15 would not see the solar farm. The panels are sticking above what they've got. They were also going to, at that time, Mark Cedarfield of the funeral home could not make it to a meeting, so he had me represent him, and they were supposed to plant further trees so that they would not, stepping on the front porch of the funeral home, you wouldn't see the panels either. None of that has been done. Also, 3 trees were to be planted at Bruce Cummings. None of that's been done. One thing I think I misunderstood you, the trees that had died or to be replaced because of deer being eaten by deer has nothing to do with that $25,000 landscaping guarantee.
Well, it's above and beyond that.
So you wouldn't be using the 25 or the 20.
Well, there was a 2-year tree guarantee.
That's right, separate from the dollars.
Separate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that clear?
Yes, that's
Okay. Wasn't clear to me.
Sorry.
I do have, if any of the panel wants it, I have 50 photos showing what has happened to those trees, if anyone cares.
Yeah, if you have them, I'll look at them.
Yeah.
So currently there are trees that were supposed to be planted and were not planted.
Not planted.
Yeah.
Does
There's-
the current owner or manager have the responsibility to plant those trees in the original agreement?
They've said that they're planting them, and I have not gotten proof of that
Okay.
at this point.
One other thing, I think they mentioned they were going to put in 2 gates that were eye appealing. Anyone driving by there would see a cheap wooden gate. So I don't think they're standing up to what they were supposed to do.
Tabitha, are these items, are they itemized somewhere on a? I know you didn't provide it today.
Yes, I apologize. I did not bring that, and I think I'm still on vacation, guys. I apologize for tonight's pops, but,
One of the issues they mentioned about the trees is they were gonna plant them until the spring or summer because you can't plant in the dead of winter. I know that was
Well,
one of the.
part of the
right,
problem
and this
is,
has all been in the Dropbox, and I've been kind of trying to keep you in the loop.
they were supposed to do this stuff in the spring, and they haven't done anything.
Right.
And what's happened is a couple of the trees have died off,
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
But this-
and
Oh, I'm sorry. if
And
anyone-
we have the problem of all the arborvitae trees have been chewed away up until about 4 or 5 feet high. I've walked that area along with many of the homeowners, and there's deer track all over the place, so obviously they're being well fed. I don't-
Arborvitae is deer food.
The arborvitaes, oh yeah. I don't know if filling it in is the answer, or just pulling those out and putting some different kind of evergreen in there. I mean, we're gonna have the money to do that.
I don't see the point in taking trees out if they're established. I think an understory planting just beefs up the screening.
Well, they're only good from,
Right, from
4
that point
feet
on,
up,
but
yeah.
they need the screening from the higher elevations too. Do you want to come up and speak?
So some of the pictures that Mr. Zwicker had pulled out, I'm Janice Heaton. I live at 14 Clap Street. I walked the property yesterday, and there were 36. I want to say they're white pine, I'm not sure. They're these pines right here. They kind of grow up like this. 36 of them have been eaten by deer. They're starting to get a little bit of growth. But the other issue that we're having on our side is when they planted these trees, and you can see all these pictures, when they planted the trees, I think it's called buckhorn, but I'm not sure. It's an invasive
Arborvitae.
weed. They're taller than me.
Yeah.
They're going through the trees. So the trees are already being choked out by all the weeds. Additionally, when they removed it, they didn't use any herbicide, and I don't know if it's because it is close to wetland that they couldn't use it, but they used no herbicide. We're getting these weeds in our yard. It's through the field that we were gonna potentially plant in, because they weren't properly, all they did was mow down the weeds, put some like chips on it, and planted these trees. So these trees are already getting, so the bittersweet is coming down from the big trees, coming down and attaching to the trees that are on our side. And then I think it's called, is it wild buckhorn, that very tall weed? They're taller than me. They're going through the arborvitaes. So some of these weeds are 6 feet tall already. They were supposed to be maintaining that, so they're not even maintaining any of this. They did agree to plant in the spring. No one's been there. They were supposed to plant grass. Additionally, there have been severe safety issues. They unearthed 2 wells. I contacted Brett Chapman multiple times. He did not cover them. I will say, Wheaton College, when I finally was able to get in touch with them, came out and filled one in, both of them in. One of them was right on the street. It was 20 feet deep. It was full of water, and my 12-year-old almost fell in. When the bus dropped her off at the wrong side of the street, she was taking the late bus home, so it was dark out. There was a funeral at the funeral home, so she was walking on the grass and almost fell in a 20-foot well that was filled with water. Mr. Zwicker saw it, my husband saw it, Wheaton College was horrified when they finally saw it. I can't tell you how many times I said to these people, there's one well, I started in August telling him about this. This was probably, was it November? It was around November that they were finally filled in. Since then, so many trucks have been driving over this that I've asked for them to kind of investigate to make sure there aren't any other unmarked wells, to make sure the ones that have been filled in are still stable. This well was on the street, so it isn't even a matter of trespassing. It's just a matter of walking. No one knew it was there, so, but once it was discovered, it needed to be taken care of immediately. There is another well, I think it's been filled in, but there's just this cement thing on top of it with 2 handles. So a kid could potentially drag it off. I'm not sure if that one's filled in, but I have brought that to their attention many times. So I'm concerned that if they can't manage to fill in an open well, that, and actually a 2-year-old almost fell into that well. That's when my daughter said, oh, I almost fell into that well too, because she had told me I tripped in a hole. I didn't think it was a 20-foot well. She tripped over it. It could have been a tragedy, so if they can't fill in something like this, they haven't mowed the lawn, they've done nothing. So, and now we don't even know who owns it. And we have heard nothing about the.
Some solar or something.
Right, so who do we
owns the
contact?
property?
Because also in addition, they said that the 30% discount, that they could only do it once, that they were never gonna do it again. When I contact National Grid, they said they should be doing it every 6 months. They should be reassessing our energy usage every 6 months. It shouldn't have been this be-all, end-all one time. I think the reason they did that is they had every intention of selling it and taking off, which is what we feared. So I'm not really sure. So in terms of, there is an assurance bond for $25,000. That isn't supposed to be touched until after the 2-year tree warranty is up. They're supposed to replant anything that died. They were supposed to maintain the weed growth and the vine growth so it doesn't choke out. Additionally, there's $20,000 in escrow for our property line. At this time, I think Kevin and I would like to be the ones to hire and to have control of that money ourselves, because we've decided that we probably will plant it on our property. Wheaton had given us some permission to go onto their property, but where these invasive weeds and vines were cut improperly, they've seeded all through there. So we're thinking we should probably do it on our own property where we can maintain it ourselves and where we will maintain it, because we have a vested interest in making sure, you know, that it's maintained, because we don't even know now who owns it. So, and again, I think it was every 6 months they were supposed to come out and like landscape, and we haven't seen anyone anywhere. So at this point, I think that we've been good neighbors. We've had to suck it up for the town, and I think that we're hoping that you guys support us in this, because, you know, like I said, we had to put our best interests aside for the town. And at this point, they're just, I don't know. There's been, like I said, the well was really a problem, and that just really solidified for me my distrust of them.
What was the,
I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, in terms of the maintenance of the property, because I know this started before Frank
Yeah.
and I joined last year, and obviously all the new folks here are not up to speed with the whole history of this property, but in terms of the requirements of maintenance, by whom, what was this, specifics of that were built into this agreement, and what recourse is there then by the town, whomever, to hold them accountable for not maintaining that or living up to that? I don't think that, I'm assuming that wasn't built into the, the surety or the bonds that were set aside were not for routine maintenance. So I don't know myself what was the language of that maintenance side of things.
Your memory's probably better than mine,
Yeah.
but the maintenance, as I recall, revolved around two basic areas. One was the landscaping, in terms of the survivability of whatever was planted. And the other area was the decommissioning, if necessary. Either they've reached their useful life, they being the solar panels, and there is a requirement under our bylaw that, and forgive me, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but a certain amount of money be put into an escrow account to ensure the decommissioning on an annualized basis as part of our bylaw. On an annualized basis, X percent of the cost of decommissioning is put in an account so that when the time comes, less the scrap value, someone, if they don't, the town can hire someone to go in and pull all those out and
Okay.
restore the site.
But in terms of just regular routine, if it's grass, if it's weeds, if it's trimming that stuff down,
They were supposed,
I mean, like any property,
I was
commercial, residential,
under the
whatever.
understanding it was every 6 months they were supposed to do a walkthrough and take care of it. I don't know if it was during the summer, if they were gonna weed whack around the solar panels every month. I was more concerned about what they were doing outside of the fence, but I was under the impression it was every 2 months. Garth had said to us that the trees all had a 1-year guarantee, so the dead trees should be.
Yeah, all that should
Replaced.
be replaced.
My
Agreed.
feeling is Garth had told us privately when he was on our property that he hadn't been paid. So my feeling is he didn't get paid, so he's like, too bad, I'm not upholding the warranty.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
was
that's
gonna be
hearsay.
Part
but
2 of
he-
my question.
Yeah, he had told
pertains to
us
the warranty. Who
There
holds
was
the
a warranty through the plant grower,
Well,
but
that-
he hadn't
that's
been
why we
paid
have
and
the
he hadn't been
surety.
able to pay the plant grower.
Steve, was
That's
your
why-
question
Cover the
getting?
warranty?
And I don't believe that Garth Dixon, the plant grower, landscape
He was the planter.
landscape planter.
He bought them from a company, and he had told us, like I said, when we were walking through our property, he hadn't been paid, and he
Right.
couldn't pay the provider.
I believe him and the owners have split ways
Yeah,
at this point.
and I don't think he, my feeling is he probably hasn't gotten paid, and whoever didn't pay for the trees, they're not gonna uphold the warranty. And that's why, but I would think that the new owner bought that problem, and that it's like, I'm a landlord, if I sell my house and my tenant is there, the new owner owns the lease, they have to uphold it, so I don't
Well, if
understand
the
why.
contractor put the trees in, then he should replace them. Is that weird?
I don't
But
think
if
the
he hasn't been
contract-
paid.
That doesn't matter. He still put them in.
Yeah, but they.
But
He-
the
he
contract
installed
wasn't
them.
between us and
It
the
doesn't matter.
landscaper,
He
it was
installed
between,
them.
I think the contract was between the landscaper and the
He
solar
would
farm, I'm not really
Have to go
sure.
to court against somebody to get his money.
Yeah, and I'm not
Well,
minimizing
he's
both the impact or the intended impact and now the lack of impact of the landscaping, but, a couple things you mentioned specifically, uncovered wells. At the end of the day, the project may be owned by someone else, but it's sitting on land that's owned by Wheaton
Right.
College. It's their liability that's exposed first and
And
foremost.
I called the police, I called the town manager, I called here, I called Wheaton. Wheaton, when I was finally able to get in touch with someone, did immediately, I will give them that, they immediately filled it in. One of them, though, is just sitting there, like I said, it has 2 handles on it, and it's, you can see it from the street. So it's not hidden in terms of being one of and the other one, they filled it in, I'm not sure what they filled it in with, But with these huge construction electric trucks driving over that, I'm just concerned that it could have weakened the ground.
Were these wells on, the what was it, the Bowser property?
Yes. Kevin and Dean looked at it as well, and I mean, they were deep, and they were full of water. And they were literally, one of them was half, like, it was right next to the pavement of the road. So it was very, very, so it wasn't a matter of kids trespassing, it
They
was a
just
matter
left him
of-
there without any marking around him?
I think
But
it's
they've-
been 200 years old, that property is so old, I
Oh,
don't know.
whoever uncovered him.
Yes.
just-
But they've been filled in.
That one has been filled in, but it has been driven over by multiple electric trucks, so I'm concerned that it was filled in, but it may not be safe still.
Well, and obviously, this has taken on a different dimension than I was, I don't want to say prepared to deal with, anticipating to deal with tonight, and that was the landscaping, but, you know, some of these other situations. And without casting aspersions at anyone, you know, the one constant throughout this is Wheaton College. You know, Wheaton College is a you know, a Norton entity who has been responsible in the past. My point in raising this is, does it, rather than us going out and try to address some of these landscaping issues, it may be useful to invite a representative from Wheaton and get their assessment of what the status of the project is, who they anticipate will be maintaining it. You know, if everything dies, it's a, if you will, a brush fire threat, so that threatens their own property, let alone that of the neighbors. And try to get a sense from them, and again, I'm just thinking out loud, try to get a sense from them of either what has gone wrong, or perhaps, in their opinion, what is not wrong, but things like exposed wells are very disconcerting. And perhaps working through them to try to get resolution to some of this before we go off and use this money for, you know, it's one thing to take on a responsibility of landscaping, but by using this money, I don't want to take on the responsibility as well of you know, leaving wells uncovered. That really requires participation, in my estimation, of the property owner.
Like I said, they did send someone out, I think it was Ribeiro, he came out, Mr. Ribeiro came out, filled it in. They filled in the other one, it's just that they, like I said, they put a cover over it as well. I just don't know, like I said, with the amount of traffic that's been there, if anything's been compromised. And I think I'm just confused about, are we talking about going into the 25,000 surety that was for after the fact to finish this? Or that's the part I thought was supposed to be, once this was done, once it was turned on, then that was available in case, like, I don't know, beetles ate everything. That it wasn't to be, to finish what they, you know, they kind of strong-armed everyone that night. They came in here in November and said, please sign this. We need it signed, we need it signed, we need it signed. Everyone's gonna walk away. And so we all had to agree that we were gonna wait through the winter and they would plant it first thing in the spring, and then that's it. No one's ever,
Just to recall for half the board, back in November, it was The Price is Right. We were going back and forth for a good hour and a half.
Yeah.
And a lot of things were said by the rep from Norton Solar as well as the rep from Wheaton College. If we can get a transcript, whether it be video or written.
We have minutes. We
Oh,
should
yeah,
have minutes.
just to explain exactly what was agreed
Right.
to. I agree, there were things they said they would do after the fact,
Mhm.
once we signed. So I think also, I don't remember his name, if it was the CFO of Wheaton College, but there was a rep.
Brian.
There was, yeah.
Brian
It was,
Lanier,
okay.
Douglas.
Yeah.
And he's been CC'd on, he's been on
Mhm.
the communication chains, but I haven't
He
had
doesn't
that just
often
specific
respond.
conversation, yeah.
I don't think he can, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know if he has to go through an attorney or I'm not.
Well,
I
that's
don't know.
okay. I mean, again, we're not looking to indict anybody.
Right, I don't
we're trying
know
to
if
get-
I don't know if he's like, he wouldn't, when he jogs by our house, he like takes off if he sees me, so I don't know if, I don't know if it's me, or if he just doesn't want to have any like off-the-record conversations with me.
Well, as I recall, and as I try to catch up on, from a memory perspective, there are two buckets, the 25,000, and you're right, that was not to do work, that was to ensure survivability, if you will,
Yeah.
of what had been planted.
After the warranty was.
Right, and then the 20,000 was to ensure that they would plant what they said they were going to plant.
For us.
For
For their
Neighbors.
specific-
Yeah, no,
Yes.
just for us specifically.
Well, I-
To Janice and Kevin Heaton.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, there was-
The
item
solar
5,
company
it's
gave
like-
10,000 and Wheaton College gave 10,000 to put in an escrow account just for our property. Originally, they
Okay.
wanted to give me $2,000 cash.
Okay.
Yeah, but then they also
Yes.
stipulate for the Zwickers and the others specific.
Right, so
trees.
those
3
13
trees here,
additional
3
trees, that
there.
was a different, I think, do you have that
Yeah.
right here?
And I wasn't aware that those were so incomplete at this point, so that's,
All right, so I hear what you're saying. I was confusing. The 20,000 was to cover all of that, but what you're saying is they would do the, in your case, the 3 trees.
Trees.
Okay, I have that here.
Oh, you have
Yeah.
it? Does anyone need it?
I
No, thank you.
We've read it.
misinterpreted. I thought the 20,000 was to cover
Everything
that.
mentioned in the document? I'm sorry? Everything was mentioned in the document? Yes. Okay.
Now, I guess, given even the money that is available in that escrow account, is that enough to finish all of the work and that hasn't been done and fix all the work that was done poorly? Or do we need to?
we'd have to scope it and see. I wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
say that.
that would be my, even if they want, even if the managers want to take a hands-off approach and tell us to deal with it, we need to know that we're not trying to do more than we actually can, given the current scope of things.
Well, I-
If they need
To
My
circle back to
opinion
the
was
beginning,
they
you
can't
would-
turn it on until they comply with everything. And you would
Tabitha.
think that they would want to turn the.
Yeah, so it hasn't been turned on yet, right?
No.
As far as I know.
They're not supposed to until,
Yeah.
Oh, no, they can't, I've already talked to the electrical inspector and the building inspector. They're not turning anything on until we
Right.
settle
but
it.
I think that
So
one of
they've
the other
confirmed that
issues-
there are certain things that they're not gonna do? Is that?
Yeah, they've,
like-
they,
so
they
they've
came
agreed
back
to
to me
it,
because we had the
and now they're saying
conversation that they said they were doing all these things.
So the
And then
things
they
that
said, we'll do those, but not the rest of it. And I said, I need proof that you did these things, first of all, and then I need to know that I can get money to do the rest of it if you're not gonna do it.
Well,
I'm thinking more of an actionable thing. I mean, if they said that definitely they're not gonna do, A, B, and C, is that something that we can?
Well, here's part of the problem, is I read this, and thank you for pointing it out, the 20,000 was specifically for you. That the other items for the Zwickers,
There's so much outstanding right now, it's not.
They're not being a very good neighbor.
yeah, I want to get to completion on this thing. And when I mean, when I say completion, compliance.
Correct.
And, I'm a little hesitant, I'm quite hesitant now to take on this $20,000 and try to complete something that is only going to solve part of the potential problem. So I'd like to invite, at bare minimum, the representative from Wheaton, because, again, these wells concern me, even if they're all taken care of now. And then, to the extent we can get anyone from Norton Solar, a representative, to
I
say-
think another company named C2 now owns it.
Yeah, it's C2, it's some funny thing, I can't.
It's been
Well-
sold a few times since the last meeting.
I mean, at the end of the day, they're gonna have either a lot of expensive reflectors of light out there, or they're gonna have a functioning solar farm.
Right.
And they're not gonna have a functioning solar farm if these items aren't addressed.
Right.
So,
And we're trying to be reasonable as much as I've been painted as unreasonable. I mean, we've been so patient. Like I said, I am concerned about the overgrowth of these vines and weeds. I mean, they could get into the solar farm. They're already taller than me. They were knocked down at the end of last season. They're as tall as some of the arborvitaes. So, I mean, it could overtake the field potentially. But I just don't understand how they came in here, they said, we're gonna do this, this, and this, please sign, please sign, please sign, and then they sell it and take off.
And when I came on, I gave them a bit of the benefit of the doubt,
Right.
trying to work things out with them, and
And I didn't communicate with them. I communicated through you because I said they don't like to communicate with me. So I tried to also be reasonable.
well, does that make
Okay.
sense to folks that we,
Thank you.
try to
Yeah.
reach out to someone from Wheaton as the property owner, whoever the current representative of the solar farm is, and ask them in for our next meeting. Again, I'm not looking to rake people over the coals, I'm just trying to get to a conclusion and compliance with this. And obviously, it's in their best interests to get this solar farm up and running, and it's not gonna happen until they've complied.
Yeah, you would think that that would be some incentive.
Yeah.
to-
Yeah.
Just for clarification, since November, the solar panels have been sold twice? Or just once?
No, I think just once.
Just once, okay.
Yeah, the C2 maximum solar, I can't keep them straight in the.
And do you have contacts for these folks?
I do,
To invite them in?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is that,
That makes complete sense.
Sounds good.
Would
I
town
think they need
council
to be
be
here,
of
too.
any assistance here at all, just to provide
new
some
owners.
feedback? or
Yeah,
any
yeah.
Send a
thoughts?
I was thinking when we were talking that it would be good to touch base with her and at least get her thoughts before we meet with them.
Yeah.
So I'll do that.
Right.
Who is this?
Town
Town
council.
council, KP.
yeah, well,
I might also suggest that when we get in touch with C2, we let them know the general tenor of discussions and say they may want to speak to Norton Solar prior to the meeting to understand things. Or understand what Norton Solar agreed to that they may not have shared previously. Or
think they-
something.
yeah.
It's- We don't want
What
them,
answers?
yeah. They want, let them understand who may be at fault.
Have they been in the loop in any of this?
The previous owners?
The new owners?
The new owner?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're the ones
Oh,
we
so-
were communicating with.
Yeah.
But are they aware of the verbal agreements that were in the notes that the new owner had to comply with? I think that's the
Yeah,
question.
that's.
look, it goes beyond verbal. I mean, this is part of
Oh,
the.
yeah.
It's a-
the
it's a
special
permit, so it's in
Oh,
the
so there's no
permit.
surprises, there's no.
There shouldn't be, no.
Well,
Okay, that's what.
Well, do
Out of
the
red.
responsibility and commitments transfer over with the new ownership, and
They would
are
have
they
to.
Yes.
familiar with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but,
Yes.
yeah, so,
Special permit runs with the land.
Yeah.
yeah.
I follow you.
Well, let's try to,
Thank you,
know,
everyone.
invite these folks in and try to get some resolution.
Did we give him back his photos?
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Did you need your photos back?
No, it's,
I'll give them to.
but if this is a duplicate set, why don't we hold on to them just, great, thank you.
Do you want to set a time for them?
Miss Hayden,
Supposed to know it,
did
or-
you need yours back?
No, they're from me. Yeah, they're all.
Okay.
Not knowing exactly when
Thank you.
they'll be able to make it.
Oh, yeah,
Again,
right.
I
I'll
don't
check
want
with her.
to,
This choke cherry and boxwood and stuff like that, that's just grown because everything was cleared.
Stuff's everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, I
But
mean,
unless invasive removal and then operation and maintenance plan is required, I don't know. Go ahead, Steve.
you know, I was just gonna say, we need to have, this needs to be sooner rather than later, certainly. So I don't know what, leverage we have, but I don't want this to become, well, we can't make it this meeting or next meeting, this person's on vacation, and so on, and then we're now in September and we're still waiting to meet, so however we get to that point, I don't know, but
It's either
we obviously need
next week
to-
or the 11th.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be soon that
When
that
were
takes
those-
place.
Exactly. When were those pine trees planted along those lines? We want to make sure everything is within that 1
A
year.
year ago.
Oh, that was all last
A year-
last
a
fall.
year
I mean,
ago.
it was late in the
At least,
season.
yep.
Yeah.
My belief is that they want to turn this on August 1st, per the electric company. So I would think they'd want to respond to your request.
Yeah, we would hope so.
I would hope.
yeah, and
But actually,
supposed
if
to
they
get them back
don't,
next week.
it's just, maybe get the trees in and we'll hide it and nobody will ever use it.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you all.
Tabitha, is it feasible to try to get them here for the next meeting? Which is-
well, that's what we'll shoot
That's
for,
what
That's
but,
what we're gonna shoot for,
but again,
and I'm gonna try to strong arm them.
I'm, my hope is that,
I'll work on
we have ultimate leverage, but rather than use leverage, I'd rather rely on cooperation. And again, this mention of exposed wells, and obviously, well, I don't want to say obviously, but I can't imagine anyone knew there were wells out there and they just left them until someone either fell in or someone complained
One
about
of
it.
them they did know, I notified of them that last January. So one we didn't
Okay.
know because I saw the cover, and they just pulled the cover off and left it. The other one was unintentional collapse into the.
The other one, I think, could even be town property, so
Yes.
close to the road.
Okay?
And I talked to the building inspector, I believe he
The other one
looked
was
at it.
never known to exist. Did know about this one that Janice is talking about, ever. The one near the street, it was covered over with planks, am I right?
Yeah.
And just the weight of the motion and everything, the planks were rotted, they finally went through.
Yeah, if they want to turn it on August 1st, then they're going to want to
Yeah,
get it sooner.
there's obviously some self-interest to be met if,
Yeah.
to satisfy these requirements, and again, I can't imagine they're unaware of compliance requirements before they get their special permit before they get the electrical inspector to authorize a connection. So, in any case, we'll try to get them here as soon as possible and try to make it as amicable a discussion, but as productive a discussion as it has to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
My report's next.
We're on to B, discussion, a report of the Planning and Economic Development Director. There were two items, well, more than a couple. Bylaws in terms of targets for the fall, not the least of which is the marijuana bylaw.
Correct. So I'll save I'll just run through my report real quick and then we can get right to that.
Okay.
So report of the Economic Development Director. So current applications in process. We obviously just finished up David Rossi's application. And then the second one I wanted to make the board aware of that's coming before us for the next meeting is 60 West Main Street, which was permitted as Garrett Shops. Some of you might remember that. It was a drive-through facility and mixed use. It's zoned village commercial. They want to come back because they would like to change it to a smaller footprint for an auto parts business. And it's pretty far along. They have colored renderings, elevations, and everything. So that would be a modification to a special permit. I believe those would be noticed and heard.
Is this
Yes.
auto parts or auto repair?
Auto parts,
No repair?
like an AutoZone kind of thing.
Or, conventional car.
Yeah, something like that. So he came in with some drafting materials and we met and we talked about it. It seems pretty clear cut. There's no wetlands protection district or anything, and it seems like it's a lesser use than is currently permitted. So just wanted to make the board aware that that's coming up.
Is this,
House size, did he say what size building? Because he had like a 13,000.
Yeah, it's smaller. It's
Really?
decreased.
It was a pretty tight site
Yeah.
for what he was proposing.
I guess there was a lot of issues with the abutters with sound potentially from the drive where
Right.
they couldn't get someone to lease the space.
You know, my thought would be, we have a drive-in approved as of record. Rather than minor modifications which may leave the site, might leave the drive-in as a matter of the special permit on record, I'd just soon start over so that the special permit no longer has the drive-in. In other words,
Oh, yeah.
an auto parts, it goes in, and we say, well, you know, it's less intrusive than what was originally proposed, and for whatever reason, auto parts don't work for them, and it goes back as well. I do have a special permit for a drive-up window. Let me go back to that. I just soon get that off the table.
Okay.
That's a good point. I agree. Okay.
I mean, they're typically good-sized buildings.
Well, 13,000 square feet is,
Yeah, before
Yeah,
that.
I want to say the
Permit.
new one's like 8,000 or something. It's
Really?
somewhere, yeah.
okay.
And where exactly, 60 West Main is where?
It's right across from the old
Back up.
The old Bank of
Oh,
America.
that's the Bank of America.
The old
Oh,
bank.
Bank of America, okay.
The old former Bank of America building.
Got it.
Which opened in
Across the street
1935.
next door.
Yeah, National Bank.
Next door to
Bank
that.
Inc. and Bank
Yeah.
Boston and Bank now, Bank of America was torn down recently.
So just moving on to some updates on active construction administration items. So South Shore Millworks, we talked about. Wheaton Solar, we talked about. Noah Ryder Trucks at 4660 Commerce Way, respectively. Polar Design Build is taking over the construction management on that, and we have a contact, and we've been in contact with him. The peer review has been scoped for the construction administration, and we're just waiting on payment to get that going from Condyne. Norton Self Storage, we received a check for their surety agreement. I've been talking to Lori Stewart, the new project manager, about completing that landscaping. I drive by it every day, and it needs to be edged, the turf, all those things. So we're gonna have to send out someone for a final site inspection on that once they give me the heads up that it's done. And that includes the drainage being expanded 3 to 5 feet and all that. Leonard Street Houghton Land Development, so that's the 9 parcels we rezoned. We have a monthly meeting on the books now, which is good, with the applicant, Condyne. And currently, we're talking about how to permit it. Potentially, might make sense to do it as a subdivision rather than bundled special permits, which would still require the same kind of noticing and review, but because it is sort of a master plan and they're putting in infrastructure, we're trying to decide what's most effective and efficient permitting for that project.
It's interesting that a lot of the property along 140 is now being advertised differently.
Oh, as village commercial?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is now.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of that property's been on the market for a couple of years.
So those, just to speak of that, those bylaws have all been filed with the Secretary of State. That process is lengthy, and it's a little bit, it takes a while for them to get back to us, say that they are in place at the moment that town meeting votes them in, but we don't update the map until we get hearing back from the Secretary of State they've been approved and all this other things. So if anybody asks why the zoning map doesn't reflect those changes yet, it's because there's the process with the Secretary of State.
Tabitha, the deliberating over the subdivision permitting versus bundle special permits, would that change at all the public hearing process and the fact that
No, we would
people will
still-
be able to speak
Absolutely.
on behalf of individual lots? And,
Yes.
yeah.
Plus, each building of 10,000 square feet, which I assume all of them will require a special
Special permit
permit
on
and a
top.
site plan. Not again, but there'd be a special permit for the subdivision, and then when they actually have a building, unless, which I highly doubt, that they're going to come in with that subdivision with, 8 or 9 buildings already designed for spec, then it would be handled once. But my sense is that we're gonna subdivide the lots, and then each time one of those buildings is going to be built, they'll need a special permit and a site plan.
Yeah, we are talking about potentially permitting them concurrently, so we do a couple special permits at a time. But we're definitely, what Joe just said is true.
Okay, good. Yeah, because for example, the big parcel where the driving range is, there may be, most of the people might be indifferent to that, right? But at the end of Janet Street, there might be a lot of
Right.
interest. So as long as they're gonna be scheduled individual for individually, individual public meetings with separate special permitting processes. So people don't have to come to a bundled hearing that lasts 10 meetings to talk about one particular parcel. You know what I'm saying?
I hope that they don't have to come to a long hearing, but that might be inevitable if we're permitting things at the same time, because we want to do it quickly, so we might have some long hearings on those, if we have several special permits going through at the same time.
But here again, the trigger will be when an actual building is proposed, assuming it's going to be over 10,000 square feet, then that particular building, or if there is a number of buildings being proposed at the same time, those will require special permits, and all the abutters will be notified. Butters to that particular parcel will be notified.
Great.
So that there shouldn't be an issue.
Good. Very good. Yeah, that's how I understood it all along, but the bundle special permitting process or subdivision, that's why I want to make sure that doesn't change,
No, we heard that loud and clear, and I know we're trying to keep to that, so we are keeping to that. I shouldn't say trying to.
Thank you.
So just moving on, told you about the technology grant. That's great. Fiscal year.
Congratulations,
Great
very
job
nice
with that.
job.
Thank you. Fiscal year end is July 1st, so that's our new fiscal year, as I mentioned to a few people before the meeting. I'm just trying to reconcile things a bit before that. It really doesn't change anything, though. And then some upcoming workshops. I went to an economic development meeting today, which was interesting. There was a presentation from the town of Carver on a district that they were trying to promote some commercial development similar to Leonard Street, so I can pass that information along. And then there's a joint regional transportation planning meeting tomorrow that I'll be attending, a Complete Streets workshop that is required because we need to get our Complete Streets credits on Friday, and a Climate Change Coalition event. So,
Been busy, yeah.
yeah, busy week.
And have cut out the Serpent meeting on June 8th.
Right, and that is Steve now. Steve is our Serpent commissioner.
And,
Very
and
brief.
just, I called the, Serpent and asked them if it was open to the public, and the Serpent secretary gave me the runaround.
Sorry to hear that, Meaner. Take one. So moving on to the next piece, the second package in that file is an update on the zoning bylaw map revisions discussion we've been having. Thank you to those who've responded with their comments. The first one being a recreational marijuana discussion on whether to have a moratorium or ban. I just passed out a sample bylaw that KP put together for a model marijuana moratorium. As I heard this today, Mike Units will be talking to the Board of Selectmen on Thursday about what they would like to do to move forward, because there's been a lot in the press, as we all know, about recreational marijuana. At this time, we've been discussing more a moratorium while we get things together, but no votes need to be made at this time. So did you want to discuss that?
No, because it is a zoning article, and I'm thankful that the Board of Selectmen appear to be on board with the concept, at least considering the concept of a moratorium. There are options that the town can go ahead and outright ban any commercial activity along these lines. There's some question as to how that process works, but I think at bare minimum, we have to have a moratorium in place because the rules still aren't promulgated. And beyond that, Tabitha and I were talking that on the morning news, the legislature is actually talking about changing the law altogether, rewriting the bill. Mm-hmm. So, the concern is that the time comes, and I guess the regulation's supposed to be in effect next March, but that's highly unlikely.
That keeps changing, yeah.
But if July comes along and we haven't zoned anything, and for whatever reason the law is currently constituted takes effect, then some could set up shop, and I have to look at the law, but could set up shop next to an elementary school. So I think at bare minimum, we ought to be looking at a moratorium to see how this all shakes out and then respond accordingly with appropriate zoning. But in the interim, we have to have something in place.
In terms of the process for implementing the moratorium, what is that? Does it go to
Town
town
meeting.
meeting? So we really have the fall.
Right.
And in terms of the timeline of that, if that's October.
August.
We would have to have everything in place by when to
Around August.
get on the
we should-
warrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how many days, if it's 60 days or what's the requirement there, but
Yeah,
I think we just want to keep that in mind, so we're, because if we miss the fall, then it really becomes,
No, and
Yeah.
the chief of police, Mike, the Board of Selectmen, they're all over doing
Yeah,
this
okay.
at this point, so I think we're definitely.
good. I know they were referencing this in that YouTube video that you had passed on, which is
Yeah.
interesting. I learned a lot from that, and I was curious as to, do we have a copy of that template?
Right? Yeah.
So thank you for that.
There you go. So I don't think, so then if we don't have anything else to discuss on that point, I'll just keep you all informed on what the Board of Selectmen
Okay.
say, and we'll just keep moving towards that.
Well, let's see what conclusions they draw. I don't know that, I was going to suggest that maybe we want to send a position to them that our position is that we institute a moratorium, but let's see what they come up with. They may want to, for whatever reason, initiate a ban. But let's take one thing at a time. If they're going to move along the lines of a moratorium, let that take its course.
From what I understand, we have the retail sales, the testing, the manufacturing, and growing.
Yeah.
And we're not sure we want to ban all of it. But there's just discussion, there's a lot of discussion happening. So.
I did look back, I was trying to refresh in my head, what were the outcome of the actual vote in the town?
Yeah, I don't remember.
It was
55 to 45.
It was 55 to 45 in favor of.
That's pretty close.
So just as FYI, really.
Hmm.
Out of about 10,000 votes, just under 10,000 votes.
But the question didn't ask, you know, would you support this in Norton?
Correct, right, yeah.
It's certainly possible that somebody could raise a question to be on a ballot to prohibit it, and all of it across town. That's happened in a number of towns.
Yeah, although, at least
Everywhere it's
something
been
I
on the
read,
ballot, it's passed.
it's still a little fuzzy exactly whether that's a town meeting, a town election, or both,
I'm
as to
sure
what
somebody will
constitutes.
try to do either or both,
Yeah, I forget.
so.
I think Westboro, was it Westboro? Has done both, just as belt and suspenders. Any case.
So just touching on the other items, codification of the bylaw, I'm learning these words too. Codification means putting our bylaws together and making them searchable and online, like a lot of towns you'll see today have. We actually are close to getting to that. KP Law is set to deliver that by October of this year, according to Mike Units, and that would include all the bylaws that have been approved to this point. So that would be giving the article numbers to the solar and the stormwater, and putting it all into this new format. So that's just where that is, and that's having to do with the previous revisions that are mentioned here.
Would that be accessible through the town website, or would it be a
Yeah.
separate, okay.
GIS digitation of the zoning map. So as we've talked about, that's really a priority for my department, and Mike Units behind that as well. He's asked me to put together kind of a budget about finishing that up, because as I've relayed to you, we have like 80% of our zoning parcel based, and we have to do quite a bit of work to get it there. So I'm working on putting that together as well. Wireless towers, there's been some discussion on that because wireless towers are coming through. There's sort of federal loophole with this Telecommunications Act that basically says that towns can't, it's sort of like a 40B. I'll just simplify it that way. It's sort of like a 40B. They can put them anywhere because there's this loophole, and they can get past zoning. We're supposed to review them because we have a zoning bylaw for wireless facilities and dimensional standards and all that stuff. And the special permit granting authority for that is the planning board. However, they're all going to the ZBA at this point because of this federal loophole that allows that to happen, because we can't prevent them from going if something
like a
about
gap
gaps
in
in cellular
coverage, yeah,
service,
right.
they can provide that. So at this time, we're talking to KP about how we might be able to change the zoning, because if we can change some of the language potentially in the dimensional, definitions of what a tower is. Why am I whispering? I'm on tape. Then it may sort of sew that up so that it's not all going through the ZBA, because it's really more of a subjective decision, and it should be potentially maybe a joint review between us and the ZBA, but it's a benefits detriments test like all of our special permits. And there's also potentially incentivizing it to go in hidden locations like church steeples or co-located on a town tower. So we really need to think that one through, and it's kind of risen, bubbled to the top as far as priorities go, and it just kind of popped up, so.
I remember when the tower went up behind the Nason building there with the Dunkin' Donuts is at the end of Leonard Street, behind that property, that there was a lot of discussion about aesthetics, and they designed it to look like a tree. So
Right, you can
somebody
promote
had
that.
some control over the process, and this was probably 10 years ago, so I don't know if that was a planning board, I don't recall at the time, but
It was.
it was.
Predated me, I don't.
We also did a tower on the Norton Attleboro line out behind what used to be New England Coated Plastics. There's a tower out there. But that was a monopole and very non-invasive to the community at all. You can't even notice it. So they're out there.
And this Telecommunications Act, I think that went into effect, I was just looking for the date, it was
More recent.
maybe in the last 20 years or something, so maybe this came in more recently and has sort of put a fly in the ointment.
Yeah.
But I want to dig into it more for you.
Sure.
Now, is this come up because of the person that wanted to put a cell tower down along 495?
There's 2 towers being reviewed before the ZBA right now. And there's this 150-day shot clock rule, which is another piece of the federal loophole. They have to review it within 150 days. So they've been extending these, but I'm not sure if if that's it,
Why are they going directly to the ZBA?
because of this loophole in the Federal Telecommunication Act.
It was about 6 months ago, somebody came before this board, and we sent them to the ZBA.
Well, the monopole, the one on Old Colony Ave, we handle that.
Right.
We should be handling that, according to the bylaw, it says. we
And I'm
should be
trying to
handling
understand, I mean, if they came to us and we said, no, we're not gonna grant it, then they could go to the ZBA. I'm
could.
trying to understand why they're going to the ZBA
I
first.
think it's because the one that was gonna go on South Washington Street was gonna be in a residential section, not a.
Yes,
not a
and that's
commercial.
exactly
Okay,
it. And
okay.
they came to me and they gave me all
right.
this language from lawsuits that have proven that they can do that, so.
All right,
we
because they
put them in
couldn't
the
comply
ZBA.
with their zoning.
Right,
Right.
All right, that, at least process-wise, makes sense.
yeah.
Okay.
This may be me being naive, but if they're going to the zoning board, but we're the special permit authority for these type of projects, shouldn't the zoning board tell them to come to us?
Well, you know, Tabitha raised a point, and this may be the case, that if they're not allowed in a particular zone under our zoning bylaws, then we couldn't grant it. And they go to the ZBA for relief under the Telecommunications Act. ZBA can't allow a use variance. In other words, if the residential property, and it's zoned that way, you can't ask for a variance to put up auto parts.
Yeah.
But in this case, they can't ask for use variance, but under the Telecommunication Act, they can seek relief. So that's probably why they're going to the ZBA. I was just trying to understand process, okay.
Yeah, that's how I understand it as well. That they don't have to comply by zoning at all, so. through that way. And then this last thing that risen to the top as far as priority two is that bylaw language is being drafted by the building inspector to change some of the zoning around non-conforming lots, temporary parking, temporary structures. So they would like to put that on the town meeting warrant for fall. So I'll be working with them on that. Because a lot of things are requiring variances that he would like to just be able to sign off on, from what I understand. And I can find out more about that, too. And then the rest of it is, I believe you've looked at it to this point, and it's really a running tally of where we are with projects going to town meeting vote. So let me know if you have any comments.
Thank you.
Any other items that members wish to bring up? I just have a little bit of housekeeping, and I'm looking at you, Tim. We had uncovered the responsibilities for clerk,
Yes.
and you were going to see if you could
Yeah.
scan and
So I
P.
have,
Did.
Okay.
I have digitized that.
Okay.
I was going to, as I looked at the section again, I wanted to be sure which portions were going to which role, so I
Okay.
was gonna wait for those minutes.
Okay.
But I can also see them on Frank's page here, and that's what I thought it was.
Because I think we were going to wait for a final copy and
Yeah.
take a formal vote so that if anyone
Yeah.
asks.
Yeah, so I have
Okay,
the entire planning board rules are now digitized and editable.
okay.
At some point, I think procedurally, we may simply, in the process of digitizing them, there were a number of actual like spelling mistakes or other formatting things that were corrected, so it may just be simpler to approve them as a unit. Is that allowed?
I was going to chime in on that because it has been in the back of my mind that we could revise quite a bit in those.
Yes.
Because a lot of it's outdated and.
A lot of it is like, this rule will be clarified by the state in like 1980 or something like that.
And potentially just wholesale approve them. And we have Kaylee now who has potentially the ability to do some editing work as well. So,
I'm trying to think of the expression. seeking perfection is the hobgoblin of
I should have that, I
accomplishment or
should have that on a
something.
pin, actually, so.
As should I. My only concern is that,
I think
is
we have
that
a good-
if we're challenged as to who's doing what, as I mentioned when
Yes.
I got selected here, there'll be times where I won't be here. And if the understanding is that the vice chairman is going to run the meeting, only to find out if someone's challenging it, that it's the clerk. Again, I don't know that anyone cares one way or the other, but there were understandings when, I think, when people were elected, not elected, appointed to positions. And my fear is that if we were ever challenged on something, that, wait a minute, your own regulations say that it's not A, but B who either runs the meeting or signs the document or whatever. So that, my fear is that waiting to perfect everything, we're gonna, we're gonna be living with this exposure. I just soon get that one piece anyways taken care of and then move on to the rest.
And I can certainly send out a revised section 1.2 within 10 minutes of getting home, so.
Oh, sorry, again, just so we have something, we can vote on it and
Yeah,
and
if we can
move on.
target for next meeting. so-
You'll be here you'll be here next week?
Now that you raised the 27th, I don't think I will. I've got some other things going on that may force me to be here, but right now, I don't think I'll be here on the 27th, and we've got no continuations of any special permits, so it's not like I'd be holding anyone up, but
You wouldn't want to miss the Wheaton Friends?
well, if our friends from Wheaton, and I use the word friends sincerely, if they are going to be here, I will make a point of being here. So, but in any
We'll aim
case,
for that.
I'm sorry?
We'll aim for that then, to put
Yeah.
that sheet
Well, the next
together.
one's the 20th, not the 27th.
I thought it was the 27th.
27th, it's 2 weeks from
Oh,
today.
I thought we had it next week, too.
No,
I thought you mentioned that a couple of times.
Yeah,
just
I
to
thought,
correct you.
yeah.
Well, let me see what I did.
Thanks for correcting.
Yep, it's in our minutes
Yeah, sorry.
of May 2nd. June
Second.
13, June 27, July 11, July 25. Yep, August 8, August 22.
Yeah, I mean, is that something that we can? I guess we were waiting for a formal wording. Is there something, if you're not going to be here, do we need to have it approved before that meeting begins?
You know, at absolute worst, then, under the current operating procedure, the clerk could open the meeting past that, and then, as soon as that's done.
Okay, yeah.
So, again, I'm 80% sure I won't be here, barring our friends from Wheaton.
Well, we can put that as a first agenda item, and we can
Yep.
do that.
So we can deal with those contingencies. Anything else that anyone has, other than a motion to adjourn?
minutes
bills
and
and
bills.
Oh, I'm, jeez.
I'm like, bills.
Where's my mind?
That's all right.
I apologize.
Minutes
Approval of
are under
minutes.
C, yeah. And I incorporated changes from Steve that I received. Thank you, Steve, for always be our eagle eye.
I do have one thing for the minutes
Mhm.
that I just noticed. On page 5, under bills and warrants, it says that Mr. Daly read them, and he wasn't part of the board for that meeting.
We'll correct that. Check the tape and make sure that we know who that was.
Yeah, I assume it would have been, that would have been our first meeting as the new board, so I
Mhm.
assume that probably would have been,
It's probably Joe then.
yeah.
Good catch.
Good catch, yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for May 2nd, 2017.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion, the meeting minutes of May 2nd are approved.
All the purples with your signature.
Double check me. Do folks have
So, yeah, everyone has a copy under D of the payables sheet, which I broke out this time for you, because I'm trying to make it clear per your conversations, and I totally agree with that. The DPED budget, which is our operating budget, and those are broken out by line item, and then the peer review account, which actually is one big account, and we keep track of those by special permit number, so those are broken out as well. And then the second sheet I included for you is a current balance sheet of where our budget stands today.
And the fiscal year ends?
July 1st.
July, yeah.
So I do plan on putting in a big order on office supplies because we've been being really stingy, and expect that for next meeting.
Are there questions on bills and warrants? If there are none,
Okay, so we have to motion the whole 7,600, right?
Correct.
right.
Okay.
And one question, are there any receivables that offset these payables that are on this list?
So in Joe's packet, I include kind of a tracking sheet for each of those peer review accounts, and you're welcome to look at that as well. I didn't include it just for paper saving on everyone's, but for the receivable and then what's going out, and then I just listed the balance for each of those.
Well, it's not exactly receivable. These are deposits, 54th G.
Yeah.
There's a statute that allows planning boards to request of an applicant a review fee. In other words, we're going to have an engineer look at this, so we need, as an estimate, $2,000. So before we do anything, you deposit the $2,000, and these three expenditures are charged against that deposit. It's not a receivable.
Mhm.
It's already on account.
Mm.
So, and then if the project continues on and looks like there's going to be a need for further review, they're asked for more money. So I don't want you to think that we're going to approve the $945 and hope we get it. The money's already in hand, and there should be a balance here. I haven't looked at it.
Balances are listed out.
And I don't give the peer review engineer notice to proceed until I get that check. So once I get that check, then I give them the notice to proceed on the work. So I have to have it scoped and agreed to before he.
That's good. The reason why I originally asked for like an accounting balance is because as a new guy, I read this as being, this was coming out of your budget, the 7692. So I was looking for something that would show, okay, it's not coming out of your budget, what's the net amount that is coming out of your budget, which maybe it's on the spreadsheet here, I don't know.
Well, actually, out of our budget is $35.50.
So you broke it up that way? Okay,
Yeah, I
so
thought that
everything
would
above
help.
the-
Above is
Got it.
budgeted, yeah.
And it'll always be shown that way, so the top
If you
section.
like it that way, I can definitely
that's
keep
fine.
doing it
Yeah,
that
that's
way.
good.
I thought
That's
that would help.
the first time we've broken it down to that line.
It's
Right.
clear.
It's helpful, yeah.
Mhm. It is,
Yeah,
thank
very
you. So
detailed,
anytime
so
it's
it's
in parentheses peer review, that's not affecting our budget at all, that's all coming out.
That's all coming out, and there's a lot, and actually, I wanted to bring that up at some point, but there's some accounts that have like $40 in them. We have a lot of accounts, and we have to reconcile that at some point, so I was gonna talk to the treasurer about that.
Great, thank you. I'm clear.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion to approve a total of $7,692.67?
So moved.
payment? Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Thanks for being patient with me, guys.
Now is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.